The first interview we ever recorded for Booked All Night was way back in 2017. Since then, we've interviewed close to 50 authors combined between the podcast and our website. Unfortunately, during the Anchor FM Spotify merge, we had shut down the project and many episodes and interviews were lost. Through some extensive searching, I have managed to find roughly half of our interviews, and I'm in the process of uploading them again. We were still learning during these interviews, but I hope you enjoy the bad audio and awkward fangirling. Be warned though, the older episodes contain cursing, eating on mic, and loud pets. When you're done listening, please leave a 5-star review of the show, and then head over to the newer stuff, it's way better. Hi, and welcome to Booked All Night, a bi-weekly late-night YA podcast. Our fair warnings include our fucking language, Maggie's fucking language, our fucking pets, and spoilers. We are your hosts, Jessica Tuckerman.
I'm Magdalyn.
And joining us tonight is the author of Shadow Weaver and Monstrous and Ravenous and a few other things that I did not write down, but MarcyKate Connolly.
Hello. Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, we're like really excited to have you on.
So excited.
We actually have a podcast dedicated to Shadow Weaver where we just kind of gushed for like about 40 minutes.
Yeah, 45 minutes, something like that.
I know. I actually heard that.
Yay!
Thank you, Google Alerts. And that was so cool to hear. I love hearing stuff like that. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for Shadow Weaver.
Yeah, thank you. Get ready for 40 minutes of plumping up your ego. So,
awesome. Sounds good.
Our first question is really more of just like a pitch. Just give us a short pitch for Shadow Weaver for anyone who may be unfamiliar with the book.
Sure. Shadow Weaver is about a girl who can talk to her shadow, and the shadow can talk back. That's kind of my elevator pitch. But she also has a talent of shadow weaving, which means that she can actually make things from the shadows. She can control them. And that gets her into a bit of trouble. And one night, her parents invite into their home a person who says that they can cure her of her magic, because they don't really like the shadow magic very much. And her shadow Dar does not like this idea. And hijinks ensue, bad things happen, and they end up having to flee her home because of those bad things and to escape them, and so that Evelyn, the main character, can keep her magic.
God, it was so good. Like, everyone should just go pick up this book.
Amazing.
I really loved it. Just a gush for you. I was talking with Maggie earlier. Like as a reviewer, I read somewhere between 6 and 10 books a month. So I usually, like, by the time I'm done the first chapter, I know whether or not I'm really going to like this book. And when I was done your opening scene, I was like, oh, I'm going to love this book. And I read it, finished it the rest of the night, but I couldn't post my review because I got the arc like 6 months in advance. And I'm like,
I remember you were sending me quotes from the opening paragraph, actually. Yeah. So you were approved for the arc first, and then you're like, you need to get this book. And the first thing I did the next morning was go to NetGalley and request it, and I was so excited.
Yeah.
It's so good.
That's actually one of the first things I wrote was that very first paragraph. I don't usually write like linearly, but for that particular book, that first paragraph was part of the inspiration of how I got the idea for the book too. So that's cool to hear that it resonated and people like that.
Yes, that's
awesome.
That's actually great, because that was actually one of our questions was which was the first scene that you thought of, and how did you know that this was a story worth exploring?
Well, that's a fun story. So it actually starts before I even got the idea for the book. My first 2 books that were published were Monstrous and Ravenous, with one publisher. And I don't know if you guys read those or not, which is fine if you haven't. But I love those books. They were fun. And I was trying to sell what's called an option book, which when a publisher buys in their contract, you have this clause where they get basically the right to look at your next work, usually whittled down to like middle grade fantasy or something like that, like very specific.
Yeah.
And I wanted to sell another book, obviously. Enjoying the writing thing, wanted to keep doing more of it. And actually spent about a year pitching proposals.
Wow.
Yeah. So we wrote. How many proposals did I write? I wrote one that was supposed to be more books in the same vein as Monstrous and Ravenous, and they liked it, but they didn't want to buy it then because Monstrous had just come out. So it's a business. They want to be sure it's a good business decision, and they want to see how it did first. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So they said now. So I wrote a new proposal, totally different book, new world, and didn't really resonate with the editor, but I ended up rewriting it because they gave me some feedback and submitted it again. So that was the third proposal, and they rejected it again. And then I wrote a fourth proposal, which I realized after working on it for 3 months was objectively awful. And I had to scrap it, which is not a fun thing to do.
It is not. Maggie lost like 30,000 words in a weekend on a project of her.
Oh, that's painful.
That still hurt. That still hurt me so much.
Oh, jeez. So about the time that I realized this fourth proposal was really terrible, and I was going to have to tell my agent, hey, you know that thing I've been working on for a few months? I'm going to have to totally scrap it and find something new. I got the idea for Shadow Weaver, and I got this in 2 parts. It was one of those ideas where I get my best ideas when I'm not looking for them, when they kind of sneak up on me and grab me by the throat. And this is one of those ideas that came like that. It was like 2 a.m. in the shower because I'm a night owl. And shower ideas are the best ideas.
Shower thoughts is the best Tumblr. I just
they make shower post-it notes for a reason. I don't have any of those, but I need to get them.
Do they really? They make shower post-it notes?
Oh no, I need them.
It's a thing. And I need them.
I think we all need to go out and find them.
I need shower post-it notes now, so all my terrible shower ideas can come out.
Because you never know what that great of an idea that you think might not be great turns into later, so it's always worth writing down. Anyway, so I was in the shower, mind wandering, super tired at 2 a.m., and all of a sudden these 2 images fell into my head. And the first image was of this creepy little baby in a bassinet, and above her was one of those mobiles, but spinning over her head, but it was completely crafted from shadows, and she was the one spinning it, but not like physically touching it. She was making it spin. I was like, ooh, creepy baby, that's cool. Why not, right? And then followed quickly by another image that was basically that first scene with this baby who's just been born, but instead of reaching for her mother like instinct should instruct her, she reaches for that shadow in the corner of the room instead, and the shadows smile back. And that was literally that first scene was like, oh, I need to write this scene because that's just so weird and creepy and cool, and I love it. And that actually ended up combining with this other idea I kind of tucked away a few months beforehand that I thought was going to be young adult, about a girl who falls in love with her shadow, and the shadow's like a thing, a living thing. And I was like, you know what, this would be so much better for them to combine these 2 things. And thus Dar and Evelyn were born, essentially.
Oh, I love that. The inspiration behind that reminds me, Maggie probably hasn't because she's like 6 years younger than me, but did you ever play The Seventh Guest?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Oh my god, like it was seventh guest or 7, I think it's something else. I think it's 7 doors.
It's Seventh Guest and 11th Hour. They were like point and click horror games on the PC way back.
Oh yeah, you lost me.
I think it's something else that's a 7.
Oh, okay.
I don't like horror. I don't like games.
Way in the back day when you had to like put a CD in a thing and then insert it into a drive.
I know how CDs work.
No. Like it wasn't like a drive that came out. Like you had a special case you had to put the CD in and then pop it into your big ass Packard Bell that took up the entire computer room. Like, but there's a scene in there because it's all about like ghosts haunting the house and blah 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 blah, weird and creepy. But there's a baby in a bassinet and then the doll rolls over and suffocates the baby. But like, weird and creepy. But that was actually like my favorite puzzle as a kid, which it's just a little weird thinking about it now as an adult.
Yeah. It definitely explains a lot of your I murdered children tendencies in your own writing. Jess.
It does. I'm slowly coming to realize why some things happen. Okay, no, that's fine. That's cool.
So sort of like coming from that, like what were some of the things that like you had to edit out of the story initially that you wish you sort of were able to keep?
Shadow Weaver?
Yes.
Shadow Weaver, yes.
I didn't get anything out. I hadn't started that other story. I just kind of tucked away that great of a concept.
Mm-hmm.
So it was concept level. So I didn't need to edit anything out. It was more like, oh, that idea of like the girl in the shadow being a little dynamic duo would be way much better fit for this middle grade story instead.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't edit anything out. I just co-opted it for different thing.
Okay.
Oh, that works nice.
Yeah.
I say, having started like my 16th draft of my current manuscript.
I feel your pain.
Yeah, it hurts. I'm ready to be done with this story. What can you tell us about, I believe it's Comet Rising, the second book for Shadow Weaver?
Yes. I can tell you a little bit. They haven't posted the official description yet. I'm not sure when they're going to, but probably not until the cover is released, which we don't have yet. So I don't know when that'll be. It's sequel to Shadow Weaver, obviously, following Evelyn and Lucas and Dar and their adventures. And the basic premise, this is not a spoiler, this is the premise, is that at the beginning of the book, the Cerealia comet comes back 12 and a half years too early. And that causes some things to go astray, and they want to know why it came back, who brought it back, and they realize it's Lady Aisling who brought it back, and they need to stop her from her evil plan. Basically, it means that she's getting more talents that she can harvest earlier than normal. So they need to find her and stop her.
I mean, if you want to go into more detail, Maggie and I both love the book, and we're impatient. I'm just saying here.
All I can safely say right now, but yeah, that's the basic premise of the book. And you get to meet more people with different talents along the way, which is really fun. It was really fun to write.
It was definitely really fun to read. You can tell you had a lot of fun writing it. You know, it was very whimsical. Okay. I loved it.
I'm glad it shows. I like weird, dark whimsy. Fun thing to write.
I really love dark middle grade. I think middle grade is a really great place to explore darker things, just because like YA is chock full of dark things, so you can't really like get around to like kind of that dark humor that's going to come from doing things, because YA is a little more serious. But one of our next questions is about writing rituals, and if you have any or advice for young writers.
Reading rituals, that's a good question. I don't really have a ritual per se, so much as I like to listen to music. I don't necessarily have to, but if I have like a playlist for a book, like I have a Shadow Weaver Spotify playlist I put together, and that like gets me in the sort of frame of mind to get out of that world. I used to have more rituals, but just by virtue of now I'm writing under contract for things and needing to just like get shit done, I can't rely on those as much. I can have everything perfectly set out. Otherwise, I'll never get writing done, spending all that time trying to get stuff, just the right way. I used to always have to have coffee and the right music and the right headphones and the right chair. And now I'm like, I will write wherever. And that's, I also used to write on trains a lot.
Oh, wow.
Which was hard because I commuted a lot. That was before I got sold a book. But that was like, as long as I had my music, I could tune out the rest of the world, and I could write and hope I didn't miss my stop. It would not be fun.
I can't imagine writing on the train. Like I'm just outside of Philadelphia, and I was doing a couple internships last winter, and I would take the train in every day, and I can't imagine focusing on anything but my stop. Like I missed it a couple times and had to get on a different train to get back. So
that's not fun.
No, it was bad.
Yeah, I commuted to Boston for like probably about a decade. So and eventually you get used to it. It's better than sleeping on the train, because then I'm like bound to miss my stop.
Yeah, so. I used to. Once upon a time, I went to school in Vermont, and I would take the train all the way home to Philadelphia. It's like a 20-hour train ride.
Oh, wow.
And I fell asleep once and woke up in Maryland instead of Philadelphia.
Ooh. That's not good.
I'm like, Oops. Had to go all the way back.
I didn't answer the second part of your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The advice for young writers, you said?
Yes.
So that I have advice for. Not rituals, I have advice. From my personal experience with writing, it took me a while to get published. Monsters was my first published book, but it was definitely not my first book by any means. I think it was my 7th, I think. And I spent several years before that querying various manuscripts and getting lots and lots of rejections. I lost count somewhere around 300 rejections.
Wow.
And then stopped counting after that. And I kind of reached a point with the manuscript right before Monstrous, which was such a fun book to write. It was a YA sci-fi cyborg road trip novel. Hopefully someday I can revamp that in such a way that it will actually be publishable. But I got a lot of agent interest in that book and like tons of requests and was so excited. It was like, seemed like it was so close. And then everything came back as a no. And it wasn't like a consistent no. There were things that were like one agent told me she thought the pacing was too fast. Another thought it was too slow. Another agent said the pacing was spot on, but she didn't like the way the romance panned out. So it was nothing I could like latch onto and fix, which was frustrating. And I had this kind of like, had to take a step back and think, why am I doing this to myself? This is awful to constantly get rejection all the time. And I kind of came to the conclusion that regardless of whether or not I kept trying to get published, I was still going to keep writing because I really loved writing. And I needed to write something that was just for me and that I loved, and just for me to get that love of writing back. And then I also came to the conclusion that, you know what, I was going to keep trying to get published because if I stopped, then I would always regret it and kind of wonder, what if I just kept trying? And I didn't want to wonder because, really the only way you can ensure you're going to fail is if you stop. So it can be really difficult, especially if you're, younger and, you may seem like there's like this time limit of like, you need to get published before you're 25 or something. There was some discussion of that on Twitter the other day.
Well, I'm past that. So
I was published until my 30s. So doesn't matter how old you are. There's people who have not been published until like their 50s or 60s. And that's totally fine. Everybody's path is different. But if you keep trying, keep your eyes on your own page as much as possible, it's so easy to fall into the trap of comparing yourselves to other people. And that really never goes away. Like even right now, I'm working on drafting an option book right now because my contract for Shadow Weaver and Comet Rising was for 2 books and that's complete. And I want to sell another one. And, I'm keep looking at these, deals in Publishers Marketplace. I'm like, I need to get on this and finish this draft. I need to get my butt in gear and feel like I'm going too slow, even though, I have sold 5 books, but I haven't, I still have that sort of pressure on myself. There's a degree to which that is good and useful if you can internalize it correctly, but it's also very easy to let it like bring you down. So trying not to do that is important, and like doing other things too that what I like to call refreshing the creative well. Go out and do other things that inspire you. I especially find that very helpful if I'm getting stuck trying to write and I'm like, I can't figure this out. I don't know where it's supposed to go. Going and doing something completely different can give me that sort of burst of inspiration that I need to figure out, subconsciously have your brain working on things, even if you aren't intentionally working on it.
I do that, and then I like never come back to my project. Like,
okay, well, that may not be good advice for you. Other advice is don't take everybody's advice.
I like we read a lot. We partially
too
because
much.
We read too much, but just partially because we're both in master's programs right now that demand 10 books a month. But we love
my brain hurts.
But we're always looking for new books. Are there any books that are currently on your nightstand now that you'd love to recommend?
Oh, that's a good question. I have not been reading as much as I should be lately. I had a baby a few months ago, so I thought this was tons of reading time. And
all the authors are having babies. I just want to put this out there. Like, every author, we've been like scouring for a bunch of interviews, and everyone's like, well, she just had a baby. I'm like, everybody had a baby. Like, how are you guys writing and having kids? I don't understand.
It's tricky. It's tricky.
You have a
Exactly.
9-month grace
Slower than
period,
it used to be,
basically.
but they figure it out. You figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of what I've been reading recently. Was the book I read recently that was really good. It's not out yet, but it will be later this year. I'm not sure which month. I forget. It's The Flourishing of Florally Laurel. It's really lovely prose. It's very poetic. It's a good book. It involves like this little flower girl on the streets of France and her little family and trying to find out family secrets, and Monet's gardener is involved. It's really cool. Just a whole like floriology thing. It's a really cool book. It's middle grade. A YA recommendation, a friend of mine whose book I adore. Her book just came out. It's called Nothing But Sky by Amy Trueblood. I've read this book like about a dozen times, I will tell you, but it's so great. I love it, and I love reading it every time. I'm so excited that it's on the shelves now. Those are the two that stand out right now.
There's a good recommend. I'm going to make sure that I put those in the show notes when we're done. Then to wrap up the interview portion before we play a little game, which sounds scary. Yeah. The last question is another two-parter, and it's what book made you a reader and what book inspired you to be a writer?
Oh, good question. I'm not sure which one book I could credit would inspire me to be a reader, but when I was younger, I would read everything I could get my hands on. Voracious reader. I was reading things that were not really appropriate for me to read, but I loved them anyway.
I was reading Stephen King at 11, so I understand.
My third grade teacher
older brother is he's about 10 years older than me, so when I was like 8, he was in college and he was an English literature major. And of course, being the bratty little sister and, idolizing my brother to a degree, I would, want to read what he was reading. So I'd go into his room and I'd steal his books off his shelves. And he'd have to write reports on them. And he'd be like, where the heck are my books? So I was bratty little sister. So I was reading like Shakespeare and all sorts of weird things. Not weird, but like, classics that were way beyond my 8-year-old understanding. I was reading like Midsummer Night's Dreams because I was like, ooh, fairies, and the rest of it just totally had no idea that was happening.
Midsummer Night's Dream is only about fairies. Certainly not like a weird sex group or.
I had no idea. So I read that. I read a lot of Poe. Fairy tales were one of my favorite things. My parents had this big set of books that were old when or maybe they were new when my mom was young. I don't remember, but they were old when I was young. And they had this like that smell of like the books that are like older books, and the paper is a little different.
Oh, that vanillin smell.
Like,
oh, it's so good.
And they had these beautiful illustrations, and it was like fairy tales and legends and myths and all sorts of stuff. And it was like a good 10 books or so in this series. And I would just sit on the couch and read these things, and I love them so much. So those are some of my formative ones. I read Redwall. That was one of my favorite series. Redwall fans?
Redwall fans. Redwall fans.
The Dark is Rising sequence. I adored that. Those were two of my big favorites as well. Like basically anything fantasy, fairies, I loved it. It was all good.
It's great.
And what made me a writer? That's a good question. So it's super cliche, but I think there's 2 books that I would actually credit with it, and they're both totally cliche. Probably The Da Vinci Code and Twilight. Weird combo, I know.
Definitely not what I would have expected.
Definitely not the second book that I was expecting. No.
So before I started writing children's books, I read like all kinds of Dan Brown books and like those adventure series, like Dan Brown and what's the other guy's name? I can't think of the names now. There's a couple other people who wrote similar type of like crazy adventure books like that, and like the big like global conspiracies. And I wanted to write something like that. And so I had this, before I wrote children's stuff, I had this like very small manuscript, only like 3 chapters, about like this person who worked in the British Museum, and I don't even remember what half it was about. I ended up losing it because my car was broken into, and I only had it saved in a flash drive. It's not a big loss. And then after that, I saw Twilight and was thinking, I could totally write, a YA or middle grade book. That would be really fun, because I was really like intrigued by Stephenie Meyer's story.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed the books. And I know like a lot of people are, kind of, saying mean things about Twilight. But I really enjoyed it. It's, a captivating story. It, reached a lot of people, and it got a lot of people reading. So I don't think that's a bad thing. There certainly is a lot to unpack within the story and analyze. But I found it really intriguing, and it made me think maybe I could do this. And so I ended up starting to try my own little hand at it, and had a lot of fun with it.
I will say, as an adult now, because as a teen I hated Twilight, and I still like can't get through it. I'm just really not a fan of her writing. But as an as an adult, any book that gets people reading is a good book. So like, I'm not gonna hate on Twilight as much as I would even a year ago. Like Harry Potter all the way.
Yeah, Harry Potter is certainly much, much better.
Yeah.
But, different things are going to feel different people, You never can tell. Whatever gets them reading, it's all good.
So we're going to play a little game. It's called Burn, Rewrite, Reread. Are you at all... Burn, Rewrite, Reread.
Burn, Rewrite, Reread. Okay. Yes. Interesting.
And we will give you 3 books off of your Goodreads list. Yeah. And you'll choose one to burn, one to fix, and one to reread.
Okay.
It gets fun. It gets also really cruel because I automatically sort by rating. So your first 3 books are Beyond the Red by Ava J.
Oh, that's a good one.
The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas.
Oh, no.
And The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Leigh Mackenzie.
Oh, Jessica.
Choose between these?
Yes.
I love them all.
You have to destroy one. Never.
No, I don't want to destroy one. Oh no. Oh man. I don't know if I can do this. They're all really good. Jeez.
Don't worry, in the past, Jessica made me burn Harry Potter.
I didn't.
The last time we played this game.
Excuse you, I didn't make her burn anything. She chose to burn Harry Potter.
Listen, you can't fix it, and I wanted to read something else.
Jeez. Fix. I don't think they either need fixing. Oh man. Good grief. They were all so good. All right. Well. Okay. So you're making me, if I have to choose, even though I don't want to choose. Purposing with this, but like if I could just simply reread them all, that would be my ideal choice. So I know Mackenzie. She's a friend of mine, so I think she'll forgive me if I say burn, because I know only because I love her, and she knows I don't actually want to do that. Mackenzie, I'm sorry. I love you, man. You're wonderful. And I would probably reread The Hate You Give.
Mm-hmm.
That was really a great book, and there's just so much in there that I read it once. I don't think I got enough out of it. I think there's a lot more to unpack in there. Ava J's Beyond the Red. I don't actually think this needs fixing, but by default, that's what's left.
Right.
It was really good. I really enjoyed it.
It was so good.
I need to read the second book because I haven't had a chance to do that yet, but it looks pretty cool. So, sorry, guys.
All right, we're going to do, I think we have enough time for one more round?
One more round.
Okay.
And we will wrap up.
There's 2 rounds of this.
So, your next 3 books to burn, rewrite, or reread are Simon versus the Homo Sapien Agenda by Becky Albertalli.
It's just so mean.
Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, J.K. Rowling. And Shadows of the Dark Crystal by J.M. Leigh.
I feel personally attacked by this last one, Maggie.
Oh, no.
Don't blame me. Blame the random generator on Goodreads.
So I enjoyed all of those books. I did enjoy them all. So it was, wait a minute. So it was the Dark Crystal one.
Dark Crystal, Prisoner of Azkaban, and Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda.
Let's see. So I definitely read Simon because I need to see that movie, and that's the kind of thing I'm in the mood to read, actually.
Oh my god, it was so cute.
It was such a good movie.
Maggie cried before the opening credits.
Really?
Yes. They were doing like
the movie that must have this baby who's, making us, take care of him. I haven't had a chance to do that yet. I'm dying to. I need to have a girls' night with some friends of mine to make sure we go out and do that. But
make sure you bring tissues. Just bring a lot of tissues.
Bring tissues if you are anything like Maggie. There was a little advert for we want to thank the team that helped us put all this together, and Maggie is just holding my hand like.
They're doing it on the backdrop of the Ferris wheel, and I'm just so upset already.
Let's see. So, I guess burn Harry Potter. I don't think J.K. Rowling is going to care.
Join the Burn Club.
I know, and I love it. So, but if I had to choose, I guess.
Shame.
And I guess rewrite the Dark Crystal one. That was a good book. I enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty cool.
I love the Dark Crystal. Dark Crystal has a very special part.
Oh my god.
In my old heart.
Love that. That and Labyrinth are like two of my favorite. My favorites.
I love it. I love it. So classic.
Alrighty. So I think that about concludes our episode tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, MarcyKate. And thank you so much to the audience for listening to our late night podcast. We have been your hosts. I'm Magdalyn Ann.
I'm Jessica Tuckerman.
As always, you can follow us on our social medias, either at JM Tuckerman or at Magdalyn Ann, or you can follow the podcast directly at BookedAllNight on Twitter. That's booked OWL Night because Jessica loves puns. And you can also follow MarcyKate on her Twitter at MarcyKate. And you can also plug your other social medias or your websites if you would like to share, Marcy.
Sure. You can also follow me on Instagram at MarcyKate Connolly, or you can find me online at MarcyKate.com. Basically, if you can spell my name, you can find me. It's Kate. It is not Mary Kate.
It is not Mary Kate.
No. Olsen twins ruined my life. Sorry.
And you can listen to this episode and other episodes of the Booked All Night podcast at bookedallnight.blog or wherever you get your podcast fix. If you're listening on iTunes or Google Play, please be sure to leave a review so we know what you think of the show. Thank you so much for listening, my little shadow weavers, and have a good night.
Good night, everybody.